Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to a special edition of Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. This is the review of episode 8 of The Last of Us, entitled When We Are in Need. This episode is directed by Ali Abbasi and written by Craig Mazin. And man, another banger. Another banger. This is once again ripped right out of the video game. This is following the video game Barbade, this entire show, yet making its changes to fit the television format. But it the story within itself, the structure, the blueprint is right from the video game. And I was looking forward to this episode, this section of the game. I was I do have, for the first time, I have a flaw. I do have a flaw with this episode. I know, shocker, right? But it's not what you think. It's it's a petty flaw. It's a selfish flaw. Um, and it reared its ugly head here. And I might as well start off with it since I'm talking about it. My flaw with this episode is I felt it should have been two. I think this should have been the season finale. It going into next season because there's so much as far as, like, if you're familiar with the video game, there's so much that happened in this section of the game when you take over as the character of Ellie. You know, throughout the game, you're Joel throughout the game. But when Joel gets injured and he's incapacitated, at that point you switch perspectives and you're now in control of Ellie in the game in this section of the game. And there's a lot that goes on. Now, it was covered. Don't get me wrong, it was abbreviated in this episode, but it was a lot more that I was hoping we would dive into with this episode, uh, and we didn't get it. But I am happy with what we got. But there are some other things that I'm gonna mention when we're discussing the layout of this show. So let's dive right in, shall we? This episode, episode 8, is entitled When We Are in Need. And right off the bat, it was a joy to see Troy Baker in this episode. He plays James. Troy Baker, for those who don't know, is the actor who did the motion capture, the voice of Joel in the video game. And immediately, immediately, I had a huge smile on my face. I told my wife, I was like, "That's Joel." You're like, "What?" Like, "That's Joel from the game. He plays Joel in the game." She's like, "Really?" She was excited. Yeah, man, it was good to see him, and you could hear when he talks, he sounds like Joel from the game. In certain cadences he had when he was talking to David, who is portrayed in this show by Scott Shepard. And man, what a good job Scott Shepard did. He's a villain, man. And this is why I was hoping we kind of stretched out this section, because he is like the main antagonist for a huge portion of of The Last of Us Part 1, the video game. And I mean menacing yet comforting. That's the worst kind of villain. Very reserved in his speech, very even keel, never raising his voice, never throwing things or hitting well, he did smack that young lady. That was kind of that was a telltale sign that this fella ain't on the up and up. The show opens up with David with his people, and he's reading from the book of Revelations in, I guess you could say, a Bible class or a sermon that he was preaching. I don't know what they were doing in there, but uh, we like automatically like, okay, he's one of those a religious zealot who uses the Bible as a weapon. Weaponize the Word of God to control people, and there are people who do that. that there is a lot of cults that have started off this way, and it was even mentioned. I think Ellie even referred to it as a cult, and that's basically what this is, you know. And this is me being a Christian. I can say this: there are people who use the Bible to control others. You dig? And it is messed up. They did it during slavery. They just do. I don't know what it is. You're supposed to be using the Bible as a way of comfort and, and some gaining wisdom, but it is used. It is weaponized, and it was weaponized with these people here, and it makes you question, just like what Ellie has said later on in his episode, like, you know, when she was talking to David, she like, oh, you believe in God? You know, all this stuff. It took the end of the world, and you still believe in God? And David's like, well, I didn't believe until after, you know. And then we find out later, you know, when he's talking to Ellie when they captured her and everything, that, you know, it's not God. It's not God. It's the cordyceps that got him thinking the way he thinks. You know, doing what he got to do to protect his people. And it was, I don't know what it is. I just, maybe it's the villain in me, but I love villains like that. I know that comes off wrong, but I love villains like that. That they're the hero in their own mind, and there's a messed up part of every human being who can look at that individual and say, well, that makes sense. You know, use my best example is, well, I have a few I could use actually. Uh Most popular one, Thanos, right? From Marvel, from the Avengers films. You can make an argument that Thanos was right. You know, Thanos was right in a sense. Killmonger was right in a sense. You know, they just went about it the wrong way. Same thing here with David. You know, he was all about protecting his people, but it was through nefarious means, you know. They were eating people, they were cannibals. Um, the show depicts them as, and I believe in the video game too. Uh, it wasn't like they were hunting people and killing them so they can eat them. You know, they just ate their dead. Uh, it's messed up either way, but you know, I think it would be a little worse if they were just killing people just to eat them. Because if desperate times calls for desperate measures, I believe. So, going back into the show, Ellie, and Joel is still reeling from his injuries. He's uh, you could tell by the wound that he's not infected, but you know what I'm saying. He has an infection, but not from the cordyceps or the fungus. It's from his wound, you know. So uh, they're running out of food. So Ellie goes to go hunting, and she stumbles upon a deer, and she's able to wound the deer. At the same time, David and his people are hunting too because they're running low on food. So when Ellie wounds the deer, you know, gravely wounds this deer, David and his people stumble upon the deer first. The deer has died. And this is where we get the meaning between David and Ellie. And immediately, David recognizes that Ellie is different. She's special. That he sees a leadership quality in her, and that's a testament throughout this show. Everybody sees this in Ellie. You know, we saw in the previous episode where the Fedra agent at that academy saw that in Ellie. You know, Marlene saw that in Ellie. Tess sees that in well saw that in Ellie. Everybody sees this quality in this young lady. So uh David immediately gravitates to her. Uh they She offers a trade, you know, for medicine because you know she needs medicine for Joel, you know, because he's just not kicking this, you know. He got stabbed with a bat, and we're gonna go back to that being stabbed in the back a little in a few seconds here. So while Joel sends, not Joel, I'm sorry, while David sends James to go get the medicine. That gives a one-on-one time between James and Ellie, and this is where we get the conversation about uh David being a preacher, and he used to be a teacher, and all this here, and how the conversation leads to David saying that everything happens for a reason. He doesn't believe in luck. Everything happens for a reason. For instance, you know, uh, one of my men were killed by this guy, and this guy had a young girl with him, and you go back to like who is he talking about, and then you think back to when they were at that school, and those three men were after Ellie and Joel kills him. That's when Joel gets stabbed by the bat, and Joel killed that man. And that man, we learned that those group of people were from David's group. So now we got a connection here. And just at that moment, James returns with the medicine, and he has the gun trained on Ellie. Well, David allows Ellie to go, and so she returns back to Joel with the medicine and gives him some of the penicillin or whatever it was. At this time, David has returned back to his little clan or cult or whatever you want to call them with the deer, and everybody has received word in this little community here that they found the person that killed the man from the group. Well, the man from that group that Joel killed was the father of one of these young girls, and who we saw earlier crying because her father had been murdered. And I skipped over the part where she wants to bury her dad. When are we going to bury my dad? And David told her that it was too cold. We can't bury him now. We have to wait till the spring. Um, but he gives this look to another person in the group. I think it was James, or it could have been another individual. But anyways, uh, there is something funny there. But we find out later on that they eat their dead. So 9 times out of 10, she already ate her dad, which is disturbing to think about. But anyways, the young girl screams out while David is talking to them about how he's going to set out with some of the men, and they're going to find them and bring them to justice. The young girl yells out, kill them both. And at that time, David turns around, he goes and he backhands the girl, and you're like, man, this dude is thrown off. And he tells her that you think your father is, or you think because your father is dead, you're alone, but you don't have. You're not alone, and you still have a father. I'm your father. It's like, what? What? Then the mom goes and gets the man the food, and he gets the big plate of food while everybody else got little scraps. And you're like, man. And my wife said, like, why he get a big plate of food? Well, he's the dad. That's how it's supposed to go. I didn't get a response there. I didn't get a rebuttal there, and I started questioning, like, what? I'm not supposed to get the big plate of food? I thought the dad get the big piece of chicken. What happened with that? But anyways, so they set out. They go to look for Ellie and Joe. At this time, Ellie gives him another dose, and uh, she's goes to give the horse something to drink or eat or whatever, and she notices something is moving in the distance. So she goes to investigate, and she sees that the men are zeroing in on her. And she runs back by Joel. Joel is still just out of it. She hands him a knife, and she's like, look, I'm going to go lead them away. If somebody come out here, you kill them. Did they come down here, you kill them. And she goes to try to lead the men off. James shoots the horse, causing Ellie to fall and almost knock her unconscious. Now, prior to this, uh, David told the men that they want her. Oh well, he wants her alive. Uh, but James and the other men ain't having it. They like, look, we don't, they want to kill the girl. They straight up, they want to kill them both. To be honest with you, so David is not having that. He wants this girl. He wants Ellie. And so when they capture Ellie, David wasn't around, and the other man is like, "Go ahead, shoot her." They tell James to go ahead and shoot her, and before he can shoot her, David comes and stops him and takes Ellie. He said, "Look, if you want vengeance, go door to door and find Joe, find the man." And so while they're going to try to find Joel, one does stumble upon where Joel is. At this time, Joel is starting to come to. He hears the one of the men, rumbling in the house above him. By the time he gets to the basement where Joel is, Joel has moved. So we like, okay, Joel's alive. Joel's back in business, and sure enough, Joel takes out that dude. Uh, Systematically, he starts to take out everybody else. Now, Joel isn't 100%. Now, this lets you know how bad of a dude Joel is. Joel took out three that I can count in this episode, and he was nowhere near 100%. I don't think he was 50. But he captures two of the men and interrogate them to find out where they took Ellie. This is out of the game. I remember this, but in the show, this was more brutal. This was brutal, man. Joel tortured them to get information, and we get a glimpse of what took place over the last 20 years that we didn't get to see from Joel. What all he did to survive, and that's all I can think about in this scene. That Joel did what he had to do, and this is what he's doing. What he had to do to get information. He has both of the men tied up. He stabs one of them dudes in the knee and it was about to pop out his kneecap if he didn't talk. So he told him where Ellie was. He pointed to the map. He said, "Look, point to this map. Let me know where they took Ellie. And it better be the same spot your buddy tells me." So he points at the map. After he shows him, Joel takes the knife out of the dude's leg and stabs him in the chest and kills him. The other man, the other man said, "Why you had to kill him? Why did you kill him? You didn't have to do it. He told you everything you wanted." And Joel picks up a lead pipe and said, "Oh yeah, I believe him." Well, the dude was like, "I'm not telling you nothing. I'm not telling you nothing." You're like, "That's fine, because I believe him," and, and killed him too. But Joel is a beast, dog. Anyway, so Joel goes to find Ellie. Meantime, Ellie is held captured. We get a nice scene between Ellie and David. Um, Ellie notices a cut off ear on the floor of this little butcher shop, and it dawns on her that these people are cannibals. While she's talking to David, and David's explaining his side of the story, why he feel he needs to do this, and you know, you got to do what you got to do, apparently, and trying to convince her to join him, in a creepy, just disgusting manner. I mean, disgust. Dole, David is so much of a disgusting villain that you can't help but want him to die. You want the worst thing possible to happen to David, and we're getting to that, and he gets his. But during their talk, David tells Ellie that we're the same. I see it in you. You're just like me. I see you in me, and you have a violent heart, and I can recognize it because I have the same thing. And the look on Ellie's face is like confirmation. She don't want to believe it, but she believes it. She knows this. We know this. When the rubber hits the road, Ellie gonna do what Ellie do. And I thought that was just beautifully acted. The act once again, my God, who's ever in charge of casting this show is amazing. They ought to have a category. I don't know if Emmys and the Academy Awards have categories for casting directors, but they need one for this show. This is amazing. Casting. Scott Shepard killed it. Him and Bella Ramsey, she got the playoff throughout this show, but without throughout this season rather, has bounced off of a lot of people. Her and Pedro Pascal, her and Storm Reed, her and the actress who played Tess, her and Scott Shepard here. Uh, she's she's just amazing. And my God, let's not. I'm trying not to bring up Sam Henry and Sam episode, but she is amazing in her performance throughout this season. And I loved how she played this scene. She showed the cracks in the armor. At least it was a red herring, if you would, because she just lured David in so she can break his finger, which she did. And he's been asking her what her name is, and she wouldn't tell her name. After he broke her finger, she broke his finger. She said, "Ellie, tell him Ellie is the one who broke your finger." So, they're about to cut her open. Joel, I keep saying Joel because he played Joel. All I saw throughout the episode was Joel, the great Troy Baker. In this episode, he plays James. So James and David comes, retrieve Ellie, brings her to the table, and is about to slice her up so they can start serving her to the masses. And before they're about to kill her, she informs him that she's infected. You can't eat me. I'm infected. So they stop, and she tells him, "Look at my arm. Look at my arm." And we see, and you're affected too. So David looks at his hand and you see that Ellie bit him on the hand. And so she, when he raise up her sleeve, we see the little infection bite, but it's old yet is a bite. So now they're hesitant, and David doesn't believe it. David thinks it's foolishness. It's like, no way, she would have turned by now, and all this here. So while they're James and David are trying to debate this, Ellie is able to get the cleaver and stab James in the neck with the cleaver, killing him, and she's able to run off. Um, this scene is right out of the game. The chase with David and Ellie in this restaurant, I guess it is. While it's on fire, Ellie sets it on fire, and uh, David is still trying to talk her into staying. He wants a companion and whatnot. And all the while, this is where the direction is, I think, is spot on, beautiful. We get intercuts of Joel. Looks like he's approaching. He's getting closer to where Ellie is. So we're anticipating Joel to come and save the day. And we're just like, come on, Joel. Come on, Joel. You got to hurry up because he's getting closer. He's getting closer. So David and Ellie, they get into a fight. They get into a scrum. Uh, Ellie's able to get the upper hand and does him dirty. I mean, brutal with that knife or cleaver, whatever. I think it was the cleaver. I mean, chopped him up. They didn't show it, but I mean, just chopped him up. I mean, brutally violent. And we see that violent heart, but we also see the how scared she was, because the dude was about to rape her. He was about to do some nefarious stuff to this girl, and she just unloaded on him. And here was the moment of the episode. Every episode has its kind of tearjerker moment. Sometimes it's the whole episode, but this one here was just payoff central. Ellie gets out of the building while it's burning. She gets out, and Joel comes from behind her, and she's fighting because she didn't know that was Joel, and she turns around and it's Joel, and immediately the look on Bella Ramsey's face. Oh, the acting, my God. And Joel putting his hands on her face and like, it's okay, it's okay. And she just she just melted into his arms and she gave the biggest hug, and this is where it hit you. Joel says to Ellie, it's okay, baby girl. I got you. It's okay. He called her baby girl. Something he hadn't uttered in 20 years. And at that moment, it came full circle. He has fully embraced Ellie as his surrogate daughter. He fully committed at that moment that this is, I love this girl. I would do anything for this girl. And oh my God, it was beautiful. And it took 8 episodes, but it was it was perfectly done. Perfectly done. And that's in the episode goes off. But this is why I said this should have been the season finale. Because it left you with just that you know, it left you with such a beautiful moment. And I wanted more of the David dynamic. I think they could have kind of stretched that out a little further because I had so much fun with that. And it's a very interesting part of the game. And Joel trying to find them and save her, but ultimately she saves herself. And that would have been a nice little cute little button to the end of this season. But that's fine because all that means is we're getting another episode next week, and I'm all for that. So my little flaw is not a flaw per se; it's just a selfish want from me. But anyways, I overall, once again, great. The direction, great. Acting, spot on, perfect. I have no complaints other than my little petty little flaw that I want. I just wanted more. And The Last of Us, episode 8, entitled When We Are in Need, gets a letter grade of an A minus. It is this is banger after banger after banger. This is an awesome show. Me and my wife was talking after, and she was like, how is this like the game? Or are you enjoying this like the game? I said, babe, this is hands down the best video game adaptation of any kind that I've ever seen. I mean, everything is perfect. You would think a kind of beat for beat remake would turn you off. Now, sometimes that stinks. For instance, like The Lion King. The Lion King animated version from the 90s and that film that came out, what that was in 2019, I believe. They say live action version, but it wasn't live action. You know what it was. But it was a shot for shot remake of the animated film from 30 years ago, however long it was. And it did not enjoy it. I did not enjoy it because it was the same movie. It was the exact same movie. Whereas we fast forward to now with this show, um, being a beat for beat remake of the game, but they are twisting it, kind of making it their own in a fun, exciting way. So I look, man, this lets you go back and look at other video game adaptations that you probably accepted and look at them in a different light. Like, no, that's not gonna fly because y'all could have did better. I'm looking at you, Uncharted. Anyways, this is a great show, and next week will be the season finale. Uh, and it hurts my heart because that means we have to wait possibly another year, maybe even longer. I don't know until we get season 2, but whatever. Whatever. I'm trying not to think about it. Next week's episode 9, the season finale, will be entitled Look for the Light. So look forward to that. If you want to contact the show, You can email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. Also, look me up on Twitter at KB Radio Network and on other social media platforms. Just look up the KB Radio Network. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you are currently listening to this show, don't forget to leave the 5 stars, reviews, sharing this show, and subscribing, if you will, people. Thank you for joining me for this review of The Last of Us, Episode 8, When We Are in Need. Can't wait to speak to you next week for the season finale. Still hurts when I say it. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love one another, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.